I started composing this piece back in 2019, but I think I have been dreaming about it in many ways for much, much longer. These are some early sketches of some ideas for the piece, kind of some formal structural ideas. I put together this performance score, which is still a draft. I kept with this kind of more pictographic notation. Some of the other scenes and sections of the opera are more traditionally notated. For a lot of this, since it's all electroacoustic, I'm working with modular synths and laptop computers and everyday household objects as musical instruments and children's toys and all kinds of sound makers. I'm definitely using a combination of different kinds of notational methods. There are so many parts of this piece that I still have only ever heard in my imagination or in some kind of super approximate MIDI rendering of things, and I can't wait to just hear it brought to life with real acoustic and electronic instruments and just see it all come together. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Bell Reed and welcome back to another video. So a little while ago, I shared that I am embarking on a huge new creative project, which is composing an electroacoustic opera. This opera tells the story of 3 different cosmic caretakers who are all grappling with the aftermath of a temporal anomaly that disturbs the fabric of time and causes the timelines that we perceive to loop back over upon themselves and to fracture and become tangled with one another. I'm working with an incredible group of artists on this project, and I truly cannot express how exciting and rewarding it has been for me to finally start to see all of this music come to life after years of dreaming and planning. If you're just hearing about this project for the first time, I'll leave a link to the original announcement video so that you can learn a little bit more about it. All right, so in this video today, I'm going to share some behind the scenes footage and a little progress update on what I've been working on for the last month or so. I originally started working on this project back in 2019, but it took a long hiatus due to COVID-related cancellations and other challenges that came up during 2020. So one of the first things that I had to do to kickstart this project again was to sift through hard drives and notebooks full of drafts and sketches and notes and ideas and demo recordings. I'm here today in my studio, and I thought that I might as well turn the camera on and bring you all in for this experience. There's a lot of little gestural activity that happens, some flutes and saxophones and electronics, some kind of disjunct activity on the percussion. And our vocalists, it basically has been scrambled. So we're getting fragments of words and fragments of sentences. These are all things that are going to come back at the end of the opera and we'll piece together, but we just have these moments in time. This actually turned out to be a really interesting process for me because revisiting all of this material after so long meant that I was getting reacquainted with the characters and the storyline and even some of the sound design. And I was able to approach it all from a fresh perspective, having taken over a year away from the content. There were a lot of sounds that surprised me and entire sections that I had completely forgotten about, which stirred up all kinds of new ideas and inspiration. There were actually multiple moments when I thought that I was having entirely new ideas, only to turn the page in the draft score and realize that I had written the exact same thought down in a margin back in 2019. So I wrote a note here on the score that says the memory seeker observes future memories. They don't meddle. Oh, that's interesting. So I'm at least consistent with myself a year later. To me, that's actually a really good sign, because if I come to the same conclusion twice, having completely forgotten that I'd ever even had the idea before, it probably means that it's worth pursuing. So once I had gotten acquainted with all of the different pieces and the characters and the story within the opera, I was still feeling a little bit unsure about the overarching narrative and the story arc for the entire piece. So I sat down and I broke everything into pieces, scene by scene, following the main characters so that we could know exactly whose story we were tracing at any moment in time, breaking down which instrumentalists were involved in each scene, and also the general vibe and aesthetic of the music, scene by scene. I also spend a lot of time preparing Ableton sessions to get them ready for recording. This isn't a super glamorous part of the process, but it was really, really critical, because this opera, in addition to having a lot of live parts that are performed by instrumentalists, there are also very substantial sample-based fixed media sections. And many of these were already composed back in 2019 and 2020 in some way. So a lot of them still need to be mixed and finished, but a lot of the skeletons and the samples were already in place in various different Ableton sessions. So I exported MIDI for all of the notated parts and imported that into my DAW. I set up tempo maps and click tracks and brought in all of the fixed media components and interspersed them among the MIDI parts or the MIDI demos, and then set up new recording tracks to eventually record the live instrumentalists. I also made a whole bunch of checklists to ensure that I wouldn't miss any of the little details while we were recording. So I'm sure this seems like overkill to some of you, but for me, working on a project of this size with all of these different pieces and elements and people and stories and characters and all of these ideas running through my head, I really needed to take some time up front to just lay everything out and get organized and make a plan of attack for the entire thing. This is something that I do all the time before jumping into big projects, and I always find that the extra time you take up front saves me so much time in the long run, so it's more than worth it. Back in early 2020, I had the opportunity to meet with this group of musicians to have a sight reading and stumble through of the piece, which was super, super cool. During that rehearsal, there was one scene in particular that I realized after kind of working through it with the group just wasn't quite working the way that I had hoped. So when I revisited the opera this past month, I decided to come back to this scene again and start from scratch and reconceptualize it in a new way. The idea behind this is that there are these different little motive cells, these little material cells. So this one's like this one's and they kind of expand out to this point where everything is this like rising pattern. And in order to do this, Ryan has created a really nifty and very useful max patch where he's basically programmed these cells in as like MIDI patterns, and the max patch allows him to send the MIDI information out to trigger the sequences on the Hydrasynth just with like a single note or key press. And it also allows, he's going to talk more about it, but it also allows him to basically sequence the events and follow this score more or less. So that's what we're working on right now. And yeah, let's do it. Okay, so I'm recording a lot of this project from my home studio, and this room is essentially just a converted bedroom. So while it works great for recording electronic instruments, which just go direct into my interface, it doesn't work so well for acoustic instruments like horns or voice or any other acoustic instrument. There's a lot of strange kind of echo flutters and room tones. Not to mention, there is a whole lot of completely unpredictable outside sounds like cicadas and dogs barking and sirens and neighbors doing neighbory things. So a couple of weeks ago, I did something that was super, super fun, which is I turned the bathroom that is connected to this studio into a recording booth. So you can actually hear the echo in here as soon as I walk in, probably. Hello. So this is actually a bathroom. You don't need to go in there, but it's just a bathroom. And then there's this very odd little sort of bathroom, like foyer space. One of the things that I have is actually a sound rejection panel that I'm going to put on the window. And then I'm going to put the sound dampening blankets on all of the walls. I have a carpet for the floor, and I'm also going to try putting up some acoustic paneling on the ceiling, some foam paneling to kind of make this room as dead as possible. It sounds great, and all of the recordings are turning out really well. So that is what I have been up to on this opera project over the last few weeks. It has been super, super busy, and I've gotten a lot done. There is still so much to do, but it's all really exciting and really, really rewarding work, and I can't wait to continue sharing it with you. At the point of recording this video, I've actually also started to record flute parts, and so my next task after finishing that is to go through all of the recordings that we've made together and to edit and finalize all of the takes from Justin. After all that is done, I'm going to start preparation for recording all of the other instrumentalists and vocalists. So, you know, more checklists. Okay, wait, but I'm also going to start working on a section of the opera that I am super, super excited about, which is a collaborative effort with the people in my Patreon community. So I'm going to be asking the folks in my Patreon community who want to participate to contribute samples, so sounds, different types of sounds, and also stories that I am going to be kind of remixing and scrambling together using a Max Patch that I'm building. And I'll also be sharing this Max Patch with patrons so that you can use it to scramble and mangle your own samples for your own projects as well. So if you want your sounds and stories to make their way into this opera, I invite you to check out my Patreon page. Speaking of Patreon, I just want to take a minute to extend a huge thank you to everyone in that community who are helping to bring this project to life. As a member on Patreon, you get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes content and video blogs as I continue to work on this project. You're going to get to see rough drafts, sketches, work in progress, and you can join me virtually in my studio for mixing sessions, Q&As, and more. It also means that you will have your name printed on the physical release of this project when it comes out. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening and watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.